I think we're live now.
We're live? Are we live?
Yeah.
Is it working?
Hello, everybody.
Yep, we're live.
Yay.
Okay.
Now we know it works. So we're just gonna hang around, chat for a little bit before everybody jumps online.
So there's a little bit of a delay, just so you know. So let's see here. We have Faith and Ellie.
Hi, Faye. Ellie.
And
Hi, guys.
And Luke.
Hey, Luke.
Hey Luke, good to see you. We're not hear from you.
Yeah.
And Noah.
Hey,
Hi,
Noah.
Noah.
Lily says it's working.
Yay. Hi, Lily.
We're glad.
Yeah.
So, what's your favorite space film?
Oh, Interstellar. I don't have one. I like pieces of Interstellar, Apollo 13, Gravity.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's one. There's
Star Wars.
pieces. Does that count?
There's space in it.
Wait,
Probably
does
Interstellar.
Star Trek
Really?
count? Hey, Star Trek, the Star Trek movies count.
Yeah,
They definitely have space.
The new ones.
So yeah, the new
Those
Star Trek
are
movies.
Very top
Some of my
the list.
favorites.
Those aren't.
I didn't say
Well.
old Star Trek counts. Well, I guess it's not movies, but
But they never do anything in space. Not the original, anyway. Like, they didn't do anything with, like, physics or going out into space. It was the sets where they were in a spaceship. That could have been a skyscraper. And it would have worked the same, you know?
Yeah, kind of.
if that's true.
Well, like, there's the Next Generation movies and the original movies. I wouldn't put those on my favorites list, though.
Some of them. What was that
Yeah.
one?
First Contact?
No, Genesis, I think, is the one I was thinking of.
So we're just kind of chatting away amongst ourselves, waiting for people to join. In the meantime, let us know if you're just now joining us. Tell us, say hi, and let us know you're here. And post your questions in the chat thread so that we can answer them.
Yep.
And we were just talking about what our favorite space movies are, but we'll have some more serious questions.
I think I'd have to say The Martian.
Oh, yeah, The Martian.
Space movie.
Well,
There's some
yeah.
scenes in space. The Hermes.
I guess that's true, but a lot of it does take place on the Martian surface. But yeah,
What's your favorite real life space adventure?
I'm not.
You mean
Very-
one that's realistic?
Just like what's actually happened that's just really cool that you like.
Oh.
has anybody been following up with the two probes that the Japanese space agency just recently landed on an asteroid?
Or-
No.
Oh, yeah, I saw the picture from that.
Yeah,
There's like, it looks like Earth, kind of, or not Earth, but
it looks really rocky, pebbly.
like it looks surprising in that it looks normal
Yeah,
a
kind
little
of.
bit.
Like a filmmaker was trying to make it,
No,
but
no,
really
no.
didn't have a high budget.
Didn't it look like it was snowing almost? It looked like it in the
I
picture.
think that might be from a while ago. We landed a probe on a comet.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
that one.
On a comet?
Tell us what your favorite space films are.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm excited for a new space film that I haven't seen called First Man, which is like
Oh yeah,
Apollo
that
13
looked
for Neil Armstrong.
I heard it was.
Oh,
Yes.
is that with
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. I want to see that one after I've seen some behind the scenes on how much the filmmakers try to be as accurate as possible in like
Wow.
everything. And so I want to see that one at some point.
Cool. Well, no one has yet to tell us what their favorite space film is, but we could probably get started. What do you guys think?
You can do it.
Oh, Noah said Gravity and Interstellar and Alien.
Oh, I forgot
I
about
still need
Alien.
to see Alien.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Shame to say I haven't seen.
Yeah. Just because it's
It's on my list.
Hey. Yeah.
Luke says Guardians of the Galaxy. Totally counts.
Totally
Yeah.
counts.
Yeah.
That counts.
Again, piece of it.
Faith says The Martian. And LG says Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
It would be really interesting to see one of the new Star Wars movies do more with space. It's kind of
What about the planets they visit?
yeah, and it's like they've never done anything like that, so it might kind of stick out really oddly. But it'd be cool, like if a ship they're on suddenly lost gravity, or
Yeah.
you were stranded in space. I mean, that's in some of the novels, but where they
Yeah.
get stranded in space and have to actually deal with that, with the fact that it's space and it's really huge
Mhm.
and there's no one there, which is not a Star Wars thing at all. So
Yeah.
Hey, there was a Star Wars book called Death Troopers,
Mhm.
where a full Star Destroyer gets with like a zombie-ish virus, so all people are basically zombies.
in the middle of space.
That.
Yep.
Okay.
Ooh, we forgot Firefly.
Oh
And
yeah.
Serenity. Those are good. Those are good ones.
Yeah, it's space.
These cowboys.
All right, well, let's get started. So, thank you so much for joining us for our Q&A today. First of all, we'd like to introduce ourselves if you've not met us all before. So, my name is Rachel Jordan, and I'm the producer at Abundant House Films. And you are?
I am Lizzie Pulling, and I was the writer, and I played the main character in Descent.
I'm Max Jordan. I co-directed this, and I was also the cinematographer and visual effects artist, and many other things. But that.
I'm Annie Pulling Sweat, and I was the director and also co-wrote it with Lizzie.
I'm Josiah Pulling, and I'm the editor and VFX artist. And kind of like Max, a lot of little other things that kind of snuck in everywhere. But my main title, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm Philip Pulling. I was the art director, production designer. I was responsible for all of everything in front of the camera, mostly.
Yep. All the sets and costumes and props. There aren't actually very many props in Descent.
Yeah,
but
there was like 3.
And the design of the space or the pod as well. The
Yeah.
exterior design.
So, Annie, can you tell us a little bit about why we made Descent and how we made Descent with the class that we were doing?
Yeah, so something that we're all very passionate about is learning filmmaking and teaching filmmaking to young self-taught filmmakers who just want to learn more, who want to actually experience making a higher budget film. So we kind of designed Descent to be filmed as part of a class that we did. So it was a 5-day class where we had several 14 or 15 older teenager.
Yeah, we had kind of a teenage, young
20s, yeah, group who were interested in filmmaking, who had a little bit of experience in filmmaking. They came in for the class, and we spent a couple of days just talking about filmmaking, of the crew, and why everybody is the way they are in the crew. And then we spend a couple of days making a film together. So Descent is the film that we made during this class for these young filmmakers to come in and experience what filmmaking is like when you get that many people together, because that's really one of the hardest leaps for us to have made, was figuring out how you're supposed to bring that many people together and why you need that many people and how to organize all of it. So bringing more people in, bringing the students into it, allows them to really see what goes into that process and what it's like to work with that many people on a bigger scale project.
Yeah. So, first, I'd like to kind of talk with Max and Annie, because you guys were co-directors, and that's not always something you see a lot of, is like, yes, we are co-directors! So can you tell us a little bit, maybe individually, what your process as a director is like, and then how does it work having two directors?
You want to go first?
Well, I mean, it started out because we started doing this because Annie and I tend to have a very similar vision for this film. We like a lot of the same stories and the same movies and things like that. So we can sync up really well that way. And we handle different sides of the directing job a lot of the time. I'm much more technical, like person goes here, then moves here, the camera's going to be here. Because I also do a lot of the camera work as well, I'm looking at the film through the camera and what it's going to look like and kind of the big picture, feel like, tone, things like that. And yeah, and then you handle the story.
Yes.
A lot of the, well, you can explain.
Well, yeah, so I kind of come into the process a little bit earlier sometimes. I'll kind of have a say in the writing, in what stories we tell, but Lizzie and I really do the writing. And so I'm deeply involved in the story from the very beginning just because I'm writing it and coming up with characters and doing all that. So story is definitely where I love being as a director, and I leave a lot of the visual technical stuff to Max because I'm not fully educated in it. I'm learning more and more as we go, but I really love working with actors and directing, blocking, all of the elements that really come from the story. So that's kind of how we work together. It makes it easier to kind of have split off some of the jobs of the director, so we're not stepping on each other's feet and confusing people by giving opposite direction from each other without knowing it.
Yeah.
You're
And-
handling two separate parts, is what you're
Right,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
like in between takes, Annie's running and talking to the actors specifically, and I'm like, okay, the camera needs to move here, lighting needs to be changed a little bit, things like that,
Yeah.
a lot of the time.
And obviously we have to communicate a lot
Yeah.
with each other beforehand and on set, just like, this is good, you like this, or, constantly just communicating.
Sounds good. So you guys don't step on each other's toes or have... You guys are on the same page once you get to set. Is what you're
Yeah,
For the most part.
for the most part.
But
getting
whenever
better
there
at
is,
doing
it's
that.
it's usually just the really small stuff
Yeah,
that to us really matter, but don't in the picture.
I want the camera 2 inches lower. Just like really small stuff, but
Get a little bit closer to them, please. But it's usually always, our disagreements are always in good fun.
yeah.
They're never actual disagreements, I don't think.
Cool. So, Philip, tell us a little bit about your process for Descent. Like when you started developing what you want to do and kind of what your process looked like from script to screen.
I would say my process always starts with the script. In this case, it was the rough draft of the script. The script was still being written by the time I was like, okay, I need to get going. But I always start with research. You look for things that are similar, and either in film or TV, media, or in my case, I was actually looking a lot at the Russian and American space programs from the present day, but also a little bit in the past, mostly the Apollo program and those kinds of things, looking for inspiration in terms of shapes and textures, and just looking through lots and lots of photos of spacecraft and suits and undersuits and interiors. Another big place I was looking was a TV series called The Expanse, which is sort of, it's set a lot in the future, but they're trying to put a more realistic take on everything. So it was a really helpful resource. And I was also looking at like future technologies. It's NASA and mostly just NASA and SpaceX and Blue Origin to some degree, but not quite as much, are all, like they have their promotional materials for the things that they're wanting to work on. And so I would look at what they were working on and think, okay, so we're making a film that's set way in the future after these things have already been made. How would they have played a role in what kinds of things are in use in space at the time. And in the end, all of this kind of stuff, it doesn't really, you can't just look at the film and go, oh, I know what they were thinking there, because it ends up being just implemented as a tiny little detail in the film. But for me, it helps get my head in that space of what I want. So after that, what I then started with was the exterior design of the pod.
Yeah.
Because I knew I could work from there to get like the shape and size of the interior, and then from there develop a set of blueprints so that I could build what I wanted in real life.
You made 3D models in Blender, or was it in Blender?
Yeah, it was Blender. I did digital models in Blender, and then
You should have got your little paper.
Oh yeah, because then I took the Blender models and made physical models out of them. So instead of having to call everybody over to my computer and be like, okay, see, what do you think of this? I could hand them a model and be like, here.
Yeah, it was a little like paper. What do you call that?
Just paper craft.
Yes.
Cardstock glued together to make.
Yeah. So you could take pieces of it off and look inside and put it all back together and see the exterior. And that was really helpful for us to have. It was especially helpful for our storyboard artist, Anna, to have while she was doing the stories as well. Because
as a sketch reference.
at the time she was drawing, everything was pretty like up in the air. It is going to look like this. There wasn't a lot of physical things. Oh, there it is.
Oh.
We have some off-screen assistance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the final set didn't end up actually looking quite like this. Like this was the exterior one that I made to show what it would look like, but all this was done digitally. I never actually built that. And then this one, only some pieces of it ended up being used, but yeah, it was the kind of thing where you could open it up, take a peek at the interior, have a look at the shapes that I was thinking of so that they could start planning camera angles and those kinds of things. And also, give me changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. There's little tiny drawings in there with measurements and stuff.
That is true. I started drawing dimensions all over this so that it was easier than doing like flat dimensions. I had the model there on my workbench while I was actually building. I could pull it up and be like, oh, this thing is so many inches long. And
yeah,
it was really helpful. The software for generating paper models, by the way, is called Pepakura. You can take a three-dimensional digital model in the form of OBJ or STL file, and it the program is designed for unwrapping it into a pattern that you can print on cardstock and cut out and glue together.
Cool.
Yeah.
So after you've done your research and designed things, what did you do next?
Let's see. After that, what I had to develop was what we would call in the construction world a BOM, or a bill of materials. I needed to know how much it was going to cost to make what I was planning. So I had to get an estimate on how much. We ended up making it mostly out of OSB plywood and 2x4s for the main structure, plus lots of smaller surface decoration items. We used EVA foam floor mats for a lot of surface texturing, and I 3D printed a bunch of parts, so I needed an estimate on how much filament I was going to use, because I knew I didn't have enough. I was going to have to get a lot more. We ended up buying a lot of fabric and paint for everything.
A lot of paint.
A lot of paint.
So much paint.
Fabric and paint for coating surfaces to give them texture without making it too in your face. And then what was the other thing that I bought a lot of? Was it the LEDs? I bought a lot of LEDs.
The carbon fiber sticky.
Oh yeah, there was like a carbon fiber vinyl wrap for putting on surfaces to give them a little bit interesting texture.
I remember
like buckles and
yeah, seat harnesses and lots of little things. And I didn't develop all that right off the bat. How much all that was going to cost. At the beginning, I was mostly concerned with how much the wood and paint was going to cost. So I developed we call it a bill of materials. Of okay, I'm going to need this much wood, and this much flat wood, and this much ED foam, and just kind of using this digital model to get some numbers on like how much surface area there was total, because that gives you how much flat wood you're going to need. One thing that this model doesn't show is in the computer I developed a mock-up of how the actual structure was going to be built. This is a mock-up of how it would look if you were to build it as an actual spacecraft, sort of. The other mock-up that I had was one that showed how I was going to build it in real life, so I modeled each individual board and flat panel as they would be on the actual set, so then I could get an estimate of how much board feet 2x4s I'd need.
Sounds like a lot of prep work.
Yes.
And that's why Philip was like working nonstop for a few months, and then there was the film days, and then Philip has been done since then. Like, hasn't really worked on it since then, so it's like yeah, his job is all in front.
He was recuperating.
Yes. I was gonna say, if you guys want to see more about the construction process, there is a BTS behind the scenes video up on the Abundant House Films channel that shows a more, it's a longer video, kind of shows the construction process and everything that went into it.
So we have a few more people who've joined. We have Maria
Hello,
and
Maria.
Bobby.
Abby.
He said
Yeah.
he was there earlier but couldn't find the chat. We have a couple questions. We have from Luke, how did you decide on a space story?
So yeah.
So we were talking about what we should do for the intensive, and
We had a few
ideas, but we were location scouting and nothing was clicking. And Max went to an open house at Mystery Ridge Ranch.
Which the studio,
Which
green
is-
screen studio where we filmed it.
Yeah. And he, like, on the way home, he called me and he was like, "This was so cool. I think we need to shoot something here." And he was telling us about it and showing us some pictures, and we all immediately were just like, "Yeah,
that's
so
so
cool.
cool.
Perfect. It'd be really cool."
Yeah. Well, because
Um,
not only did it have a green screen, it had all the setup to do wire work in the building as well, that's what got us really excited as well.
So we just started thinking about what could we do in a green screen studio that was set up for wire work, and
As always, our time constraint is kind of 2 days.
2 days, and so we were like, well, I think we could do. I thought we could do a space story, and my original thought for a space story was much less involved than what ended up actually being shot.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like, we found the location that was that fit our needs for the class, because another thing that we needed was the ability to bring a whole bunch of extra people there, and have a piece where the owner would be okay with that, and where we could make sure there was a bathroom and a room for everybody to
You
eat.
just kind of
and-
end up needing a ton of space.
Yeah.
Just
And
that
also,
so many people.
and it was in
originally-
March, so it was cold.
we were
Yeah.
originally thinking of doing something that was more in a smaller location and more like not quite as comfortable as that. But something we had found out last time we had done a big project was no one could like actually see what was on monitors as well. So we wanted a place where we could set up like a bigger TV so that more people could like actually see what the camera was seeing.
Since it was
Yeah.
for a class.
And since this was like all indoors and not moving around at all, that I could keep my camera hooked up to the TV and other monitors as well to make that easier.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we sent in before we started was, how long did it take to film?
So, in actual production days, it took 2 days because that is the time that we have allotted for it in the class. The students are coming in for 5 days, and 3 of those days are class days where we talk about filmmaking and instruct on filmmaking. So that leaves only 2 days for actually shooting the film. That's like full production days. We ended up having 1, maybe 2, like,
We had
the
a
terms.
load day, and then
We had a
Yeah,
load-in
setup
day
day.
the day before to set up, where Philip took his team in and put together all the sets so that we didn't have to do that on the day.
we
And
had
then
a load out day too.
after we finished like main production, we had 2 pickup shoots, I think we did, where literally it was some close-ups of hands touching buttons and unbuckling buckles. So we could just do that in our garage. We just needed some lights and some close-ups of some hands. And I think we ended up doing the second pickup shoot was for a screen. It was like 1 shot of one of the screens.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it
Yeah.
was two different shots.
Yeah, we
I
kinda
wasn't
had,
even there. It was
Yeah.
a big deal.
Yeah, we kind of had the one extensive pickup day, and then one where we were like, and we missed a shot on our other pickup day, so we
Yeah.
don't need that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you've seen the film, the shot of the screens when the controls say controls locked and then it ticks off, those were shot on a totally different day. And then
So 2 main days, 1 blend day, and 2 pickup days.
well, and they
Yeah.
weren't days; they were like an hour or so.
Yeah, there were just a few hours.
I have a funny question. Can I ask it?
Yeah.
How long would you have liked to shoot it for?
Probably 4 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
4 days.
there's a couple sequence. There's one sequence in particular that I was like, we could have spent a whole day, and we spent 5 hours on it,
Yeah.
and we could have spent a whole day on it to get it right and
I-
to make it actually good. So
I would have liked to add. We originally had, I think, another scene in the flashbacks in the common room, and then I would have liked to have a day to do more wire work because we had to count
Yeah.
most of the shots because we didn't have
yeah,
time for the wire work, but we had
The
more
wire work is so time consuming.
Yeah.
to
like-
set up and rig up.
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't realize how time consuming the wire work. We didn't realize how time consuming the wire work. We knew it would take more time than doing just a regular shot, but you have to set it up just right, and then you have to practice it a couple times, and then you have to shoot it several times, and it ends up being
And the setup could take over an hour.
yeah, and it could be
Yeah.
like a 7-second shot or even less that ends up being in the film, and so you just kind of have to judge that. I think shots that we could have gotten 15 minutes ended up taking an hour and a half with the wire work. So
Yeah. That's just the way wire work goes.
yeah,
Mhm.
so we'll know better next time to plan for more time.
Yeah.
So if you're now joining us, make sure to tell us that you're here in the chat so we can say hi and ask us your questions. We are talking today about our short film Descent, and our group is called Abundant House Pictures, if you haven't met us before. What?
Films.
Oh, sorry. Abundant House Films. Did I say that wrong?
You said pictures.
Oh, I've never done that before.
Picture sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So leave us a question or a comment in the thread. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see here from Alyssa. How did you successfully incorporate students into the onset process without bogging things down?
That's something that we spent a long time talking about beforehand, because we really want to give the students the best experience possible, and we also want to make finished, high quality film at the end of it. And at times those two can feel like competing goals, just because bringing more people in does bog down your time. So one of the things that we did is we assigned one person on set to be in charge of the students. So what we were doing is basically each student would have 2 hours in a department on set, so they'd actually rotate throughout the 2 days. So they'd spend 2 hours with the director, and then spend 2 hours in the art department, and then spend 2 hours in the camera department, and 2 hours in the lighting department, and so that they would kind of get to be a part of every and sound. That actually ended up being a lot of people's favorite.
Yeah, sound is a
Department.
very popular department.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it.
And there's also the crafty department, which is the
Yeah.
food.
Yes.
Yeah.
The department that everyone loves, but maybe does not always love to be in.
Yeah. So we assigned one person on set, part of our crew, to be in charge of making sure that the students were rotating through those and telling them when they needed to move on to the next department and answering their questions, so that that whole process wasn't intruding on us making the movie. We weren't being sidetracked from concentrating on the story and the acting and whatever else that we were doing to help the students move through what they were doing. That was one of the most helpful things I think that we did. We figured out pretty much everything having to do with the students beforehand. That's one of the biggest things for saving time, is just don't do it on the fly, because it takes time to figure things out and discuss it with everybody. So because we prepared so much in advance, we figured out all the rotations, who was moving where, when, and had it all written down so that they could handle it. And
we actually had someone whose only job it was to make sure that everyone was rotating and doing something, because that's a whole job. Yeah, because it's a lot of people.
Then once they're in departments, something I think that we didn't ever put the students like in charge of a department or a place where they would have to make decisions on anything, and that's part of what helps it go faster. Is that they don't have to be brought up to speed with everybody, they can just kind of follow along.
So working with somebody who already knows what they're doing, they're not in charge of anything.
So like for my department, I was DP and director of photography and operating camera. Then I had Anna Johnson, who was pulling focus, and then Kayla Johnson, who was doing more assistant camera work, and then they had two of the students helping them, and then those students would rotate out. So like those students there would be like, gotta go run and get this lens or get this box of equipment or run the slate or things like that.
They weren't ever thrown into a position where no one was there to help them.
Yeah. But they also weren't just standing there observing. They were actually working and helping us.
And they always had someone they could ask questions from that wasn't like need to always pay attention to the film as well.
Yeah. So I think that's where it could have gotten bogged down, is if we were relying on the students to move quick and pick up slack in areas. We didn't ever expect them to do that, just to come alongside what we were doing.
Okay, so let's see here. We have a couple other questions. Faith has a question for Lizzie. How did you prepare for your role?
Well, it was pretty easy for me because I co-wrote it with Annie. I was, I helped make up the character and form the character, so it was very easy for me to be in the head of the character. But to prepare, I wrote a character bio, she's a quieter person, and then I also wrote a history, a background for her, which was just stuff that I made up out of the blue. And then I also wrote I figured out her relationships with the other characters, because she was closer to one character than this character, and so being able to get in the head of the character that way helped me, act like a real person. And then after that, it was just memorizing lines, just repeating them over and over, and making sure that I didn't learn to say them a certain way. I memorized them several different ways, or I memorized the words and then practiced saying them with different timing, different tones of voice, different inflections, so that on set, if any said, no, do it different, I wasn't stuck. Stellar directing. Do it the same, but better. Yeah. But, I practiced it in many different ways so that I wouldn't be stuck in one way of performing it.
And didn't you say you also did a whole lot of crunches?
Oh yeah, and
The wire work.
yeah, and preparing for the wire work, I also built up my core strength so that I'd be able to do all wire work and hold myself flat while being suspended from a wire. That requires a lot of strength.
So Bobby wants to know if there will be an intensive next year.
Yes. We're planning on having another one next year, probably next spring. We don't have dates locked for it yet. That's because getting the dates locked is actually a very involved process because we're shooting a film. That means we have to have our locations locked before we announce dates, which means we have to have the script completely written before we can location scout to get the dates locked at the locations. So that's why we don't have dates figured out. We have we want to do it in the springtime, you know. So right now we're working on developing a script and figuring out what we want to do for the next intensive.
But we are planning on having one, provided everything works out.
Yeah.
Great. So, Josiah, as the editor, what do your processes look like? And when do you kind of start coming into the film process as an editor?
I'll answer the second one first because I kind of feel like I'm still figuring out where I should come in, and so every time we do a film, I kind of experiment with different placement. You know, like should I be there on set editing, or should I be there with the script? You know, helping the script reading. And I mean, there isn't much for an editor to do before the script, you know, during the scripting process, but like getting like a version of the script before the shoot and actually reading it as an editor and being able to like put in some feedback to the writers can help a lot, because you can kind of see it a little bit, maybe a little bit better than they can, especially if you have like the DP with you or whatever, and you can kind of work that out. And that's like, you know, there isn't any footage, there isn't anything to edit, but except for, you know, words on a page. So like ideally that's where I would start, and I'm lucky that I can with you guys. But most of the time it kind of feels like my job starts right after production, and I just get all of the footage from the cameras, and then I start naming all the clips. So this is kind of into the process of how you start. You just name and organize everything so that you don't get lost later, and it helps like smooth post-production so much, having a good organization system, because you know, if you ever need to talk about a certain clip, you're like, that one clip I think is D0081C, I don't know, whatever the camera named it. And, you know, so putting your own name on it and naming everything consistently is actually really important. And then I would go into a process which I call selects. A lot of different editors have a selects process, and I think mine is a little like simpler than you would. Like selects kind of is several different things, but kind of I end up taking every single clip that was shot, if it has story information, because some clips that like, oops, the camera was rolling accidentally, and I can delete those. But I take every clip that has any story, you know, acting, you know, anything that we got, which is most of them, and just cut them from action to cut. You know, when the director said action to when the director says cut, and so that I can just watch all of the clips, and there's no like, you know, on set jabber like, oh, the sound's rolling and now the camera's rolling, and oh, we gotta wait for this, you know, as you know you do every so often.
Yeah, or take when they just kept the camera rolling between takes, and so there's a big chunk of.
So yeah, I would cut out all of the inner betweens. So it's just every time it says action or cut, I cut and delete anything else that isn't within those boundaries. And so that way I can watch all of the acting and all of the action just everything without like interference. And then this is kind of where I stop. I tend to just go from there and start a rough edit with those selects. Whereas if we shot a longer film, like a feature film or 20-minute film or something like that, I would probably go in and actually pick my favorites and put those in their own like category, where it's like 2 or 3 of the same shot, and but just different takes that I thought was good. And I'm doing this all before the director sees any of the footage stuff. So then I would take my selects and put them into the timeline and kind of rough out the movie based on the script. So I'd read the script and just kind of say, well, the script says that there's this here and that goes there, and so I put it all in that way, and make judgment calls like, oh, I feel like I should cut here, and I'm actually choosing which takes to use, which performances to use of the actors and stuff, and just kind of roughing out timing, and then once
That's your rough cut.
yeah, that's a rough cut. So once I've kind of done that, I tend to refine my rough cut until it's like perfect before I show anyone. But
Probably not the way you're technically supposed to
yeah,
do that.
well, you are kind of supposed to do that. You're like supposed to do like a couple passes, but before the director sees it. But I kind of tend to do a rough cut, and my rough cut ends up being pretty much what I thought, because I kind of refine it as I'm editing it, or as I'm roughing it out. So it's maybe not the best, but that's what I have done. And then I'll show the directors and get their initial feedback, which is usually like, it's terrible. I'm like, really? But it was my perfect cut.
When has our feedback ever just been, it's terrible?
Do something the same,
But different.
I know, usually the notes I get back are like, is this gonna make a good movie? And I'm like, yes, it already is. What do you mean? I don't know. I usually feel really good about my first rough cut, but then once we start working on it, like we usually have several meetings, where it's just me and directors all sitting in the same room, live editing everything. It's not notes over internet or anything, because that would be terrible.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah. And it's just really slow that way. So, yeah, it'd be all of us just hashing out what problems need to be fixed and rearrange scenes, because the rough cut is just a script order, and sometimes the script, it just doesn't feel right when you're watching it, because now it's on screen and you're kind of like, no, this scene just doesn't make sense anymore. So that's where deleted scenes and we had a lot of scenes in Descent we like totally moved from where they were in the script to like earlier in the film or later. We're just like, yeah, this feels better.
You can do that because it's an out of order story.
Yeah.
Anyway, that would be difficult in a different type
It
of
would,
story.
but I have heard of other ones where they'll take like a side story and you kind of have to figure out how you're doing the main story and like a side character story, how to like intermix them all into one thing. And
That
sometimes
makes
they're
sense.
like, oh, move the side story, like one scene of the main story earlier, and oh, that made it so much better. Stuff like that. So, yeah, it's just me and the directors sitting in a room and just fixing problems as they come up. And I do a lot of sound editing as well, just kind of like cleaning everything up so that there's no kind of rough edges, because the smoother the experience, even while you're just editing a rough, the like easier it is to kind of see the finished thing, you know?
Because you're watching it without sound, without music, or really rough
Yeah,
sound. And
with no
without-
sound effects or sound,
Yeah.
really good sound
Or
editing.
in this case, it's a very VFX heavy film. There's no VFX, so you're just seeing empty panels and screens.
Yeah,
and
I was putting text on everything, like, this is what this screen is gonna look like.
there will be a planet here.
Like a black card with
Pod descends towards planet. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
text on it.
Don't
Yeah.
grasp the epic scope from the words, but
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
actually part of my rough cut, is cutting in like just black frames with text on them saying what's gonna happen, and you can go to varying degrees. I eventually, since I was working on VFX with Max, I eventually made like pre-visualizations of all the scenes, all the space scenes that happened. That none of my work ever made it to the film. It was just kind of like, getting an idea of the movement and the the screen direction, or like even what you guys wanted for those shots instead of just text or anything like that.
You should clarify, none of Josiah's previs work is in the film.
Yes.
He did a lot of the VFX that are in the
Yes.
film.
Yeah. Well, and the preview is also helpful for getting the exact length of the shot figured out, because you can
Yeah.
edit to it, and
Mhm.
then you only have to do the final shot to the exact length that you need. You
Yeah.
don't have to do extras on the ends.
Yeah. So, kind of to finish, editing, I mean, is never really, it's not really done until we release it, but, because we did a lot of edits later on, but, we worked for like, 2 weeks straight almost on the edit, and because the first thing that has to be done for post-production is getting the edit locked, because as soon as, or the video locked, as soon as the picture or the video is locked, like it's not gonna change, even though we did change it a couple times, like then everything else can start, sound can start syncing to that picture because it's locked, effects can start happening because we have all the video lengths and we don't have to do more work than is needed, just stuff like that. That's, to save time, you want to lock the edit. And so we just worked, like, the first thing is like work really hard to get the edit done, post-production, and then after that it was just like small tweaks and stuff that I do, and Max did too.
We want to say hi to a couple people who have joined us since we checked in last. We have Johnston.
Hi,
Johnston. We have My Simple Pictures and Kaylin.
Hello.
And Coming in the Clouds Productions.
Coming in the clouds.
Hello.
Glad to see you guys here.
Yep.
So if you are just joining us, please let us know that you're here. Say hi to us in the chat and send us your questions. We're answering them as we go. We are Abundant House Films. And we're talking today about our short film Descent, which was recently released on YouTube. So one of the questions we have is from hold on, I'm going to go backwards a little bit. From Lily. Did you have the skills to make this film 3 years ago? What do you think would have happened if you had done this project back then?
Oh no. So 3 years ago was 2015, which means that was the year that a lot of us made Exile.
Oh.
Which was a Star Wars fan film. No.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, but if we had tried to make Descent 3 years ago,
We might have been able to make it without the class, maybe. But with the class added, I don't think so. 3 years
I
ago.
don't know. I really don't.
I think for me, like DP and or cinematography and visual effects wise, I think I had the skills, like the knowledge of the skills. I just didn't have as much as I do. I've just like there's a lot of like removal stuff or painting out stuff and like complex wire removal. I knew how to do a lot of that, but I didn't know it quite as well as I do now.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say is I think like editing wise we would have just edited, because every project is different for editing, and it's like I don't know if I'm getting better at editing because we're editing something different every time. But yeah, VFX wise, I don't think I would have been up to it on Exile, because Exile I think was actually I did quite a few VFX on that one, and that was like just learning how to start even doing it. So
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
Descent is so VFX heavy that the VFX working is kind of it's like the sets are good and the VFX are good, and if both of those had been on a different level, it would really have made it kind of janky.
yeah,
And I think, I didn't have a lot of camera equipment that I do now, but I think what we've also changed is I don't think we would have been able to do it quite as fast as well.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
It would have taken
We did a lot in a short amount of time.
What about you, Philip?
Well, what I thought about this one was that everything that I did was something that I knew how to do. It was a lot of small things that I already knew how to do. I just never done all of them for one project. So this project really stretched me in the area of being able to coordinate all the different things that needed to happen instead of doing one thing at a time. I think that in 2015, we definitely didn't have the shop space to build what we built.
Oh,
And
definitely
I
not.
was working full time, so
And you,
like,
didn't
technically
have,
I wouldn't have been able to do it then.
you hadn't started 3D printing yet either.
Maybe a little
We
tiny
might have
bit.
had one of my
You might have like
our
just
printers
gotten
then.
into it.
Yeah.
I also don't think we would have had access to. Well, we wouldn't have had access to Mystery Ridge Ranch. Where
Well,
back
we're
then,
talking more
but-
about the
Yeah, that's-
skills, not necessarily where we lived.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Skills wise, it would have taken me a lot longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think writing wise, we wouldn't have been able to write it. I think that we've learned a lot about being concise.
yeah.
And I mean, that's really why it's a non-linear story, is so that we could cut out a lot of the story
Yes.
that you can infer but you don't have to tell, and that really cut down on the sets we had to build and the VFX
Mhm.
shots. Like, it cut
Yeah.
out a lot of production that we had to do,
Yeah.
and it actually made the film shorter. I think that I'm not sure we would have been able to
Yeah. Yeah.
navigate all of, because it
Yeah.
was a lot to figure out.
Yeah, it was very complicated writing it.
Yeah. I think directing wise, I definitely wouldn't have had the skills to do it 3 years ago. I think I've only directed 3 films since then, technically. Or maybe only 2. Anyway, but I've studied directing a ton in the last 3 years. I really started focusing in on that. I don't think in 2015, 3 years ago, I could have said that directing is what I really wanted to do. Like, I knew I liked it, but I've really spent the last few years focusing in on it and studying what makes a director, because that was something I was confused about. You know, when you watch a film and you're like, okay, I can see good camera work, or I can see good set design, or I can see good acting. I couldn't watch a film and go, I see good directing. I didn't know what directing looks like when you're looking at a finished film. So anyway, I studied it a lot, and I think that really affected how I approached Descent a lot. Like, I knew how to approach it and come up with the right ideas and what was going to be distracting.
Yeah.
So for me, definitely 3 years ago, I did not have the chops.
So we're gonna take a quick 5-minute break, and we'll be back with a few more questions. And if you're, a couple of us might stay here and just kind of chat with you. So if you have anything that you'd like to chat about, or any questions that you'd like to ask specific people who are still sitting here, let us know in the chat, and we'll be back.
Have you ever had to make a choice between your life and someone else's?
Not yet.
Descent tells the story of Lynn Parker, a young scientist who is on her first deep space mission, and it deals with the question, what happens when you're all alone in a deadly environment and something goes wrong? What are the decisions that you're forced to make in that scenario? Our goal is to always be making something exciting and fun, and something that we would want to watch. At the same time, we always want to be pushing ourselves to be doing something different and bigger than we've ever done before. We love to dig into the story and into the characters, and we also feel that spectacle is very important. We designed this project to be an experience, not just for the people who watch it, but also for the cast and crew who worked on it. We have a passion to provide education for young filmmakers, and so we designed a class centered around bringing developing filmmakers into this production. We had over a dozen students, not just on set, but working alongside the crew, getting to experience what filmmaking is like. And this isn't just watching you know, edited, entertaining behind the scenes that you see on YouTube, they got to be a part of the nitty-gritty details and the process that it takes to make something like this. We had sets, we had stunts, we pulled out all the stops to make this project a blast to work on and a well-made visual and emotional end product. The film will be out in September, and I hope you guys enjoy watching it.
I'm Tiana Blanchard, and I'm the costume designer for Descent. The costumes are really important because they tell you a lot about the characters and who they are and where they live. These costumes show that these characters, they're out in space working every single day, and they have to wear clothes that are befitting of their occupation and the hazards of space. So for Descent, we had a total of 4 actors playing 4 different characters, but we had a total of 5 costumes made up. Each costume consisted of their main flight suit, then their pressure suit, and the pressure suit gloves. So this is one of the jumpsuits that we used in the film. This was for Lynn, played by Lizzie. So this is just a pretty basic flight suit that I actually ordered off eBay. This was her backup that we had because she was doing some wire work and she had a wound during the film, so we had a backup just in case we needed to either do reshoots or if the process of cutting the wounds messed anything up and we needed to go back to the original, we had this one. All of the costumes I distressed because they're supposed to have been worn for months, if not years at a time. Pretty much just took sandpaper and rubbed down all of the zippers in particular and just anywhere that would get a lot of use. So these are the pressure suit pieces. They're made to simulate an entire bodysuit. This piece is a little harness. It has a stiffening fabric to keep everything wrinkle-free and stiff so that it looks like it's actually pressurized. For a lot of practical reasons and for comfort for the actors, we weren't able to do a full suit underneath the flight suit. What I did is I made these pieces that would show in the areas of the arms and around the neck because those were the only areas where it would come through anyways. I had a lot of fun working on this project and I hope you enjoy it when you see it too.
Hi, I'm Philip Poling. I was the art director and production designer for Descent.
And I'm Peter Lama, the construction lead for the Common Room set.
The original idea was all going to take place in one set, and that set was the escape pod set. After the script was written, that got expanded into 3 sets. There was a large common room on a space station, and there was a connecting tunnel set, and then still also the escape pod set. Quickly became a large project. My involvement with the actual construction was constructing the pod, and I asked Peter to handle the construction of the other 2 sets. Once I saw that I wasn't going to be able to give my focus to all 3 of them. All of our materials, we used mostly wood in the form of 2x4s and OSB sheet. It ended up being a little bit overkill. The reason we went with that is because we didn't want it to fall over, we wanted it to be sturdy and everything.
We didn't have the space to put it all together beforehand, before we moved it to the studio, so we were just kind of hoping everything, would fit together.
We both felt the time crunch.
Hey guys, we're back. We had to take a quick drink potty break. So if you are just now joining us, we've been going for a little while, but we are Abundant House Films, and we're talking about our short film Descent, which was just released on YouTube a little while, a couple weeks ago now. And if you are joining us and you haven't already, please say hi in the chat and send us your questions there and we'll be answering them live. So let's answer one of the questions that came in already. This is from Coming in the Clouds Productions. Question for Annie. Out of all the projects you've directed, did you find this project the most difficult to make? Also, do you find it difficult to communicate with everyone who's involved?
Okay, first question first. What was the first question?
Out of all the projects you've directed, was this the most difficult?
I think in terms of scale, it was the most difficult. Just it's a lot of things to keep track of, especially when you're dealing with a science fiction universe where every little detail, every little decision that you end up making kind of has to, does it fit in the world? Does this make sense within the world? And a lot of that was easy though because I'm the writer. We're the writers. Like, as we're writing, we're answering a lot of questions about how the world works, and we're constantly checking it with Philip because he's also, like he said, he was doing all that research and he already knows a lot about science and space and things that haven't been interest for us. So it's kind of like we're just like, well, this has been in a movie somewhere, something like this. So we write something and then send it to Philip. He's like, well, not really. And then fixes it. So like, because we were doing that throughout the writing process, I had all of that kind of already in my brain. So that made it easier, I guess, to keep track of all of that.
Well, and also, since it was out of chronological order, like keeping the emotional through line through all the scenes would have been really hard if you hadn't wrote it.
It was especially hard in pre-production.
That's that's what I would say.
Trying to maintain the
because the story is non-linear. Keeping track was basically my job. Keeping track of where we are in the story was 90% of my job on set. So we prepped majorly for that in pre-production because we did previs with Josiah, we did storyboards with Anna, and we talked through it and reorganized script several different ways, and like because I was talking with the makeup department and the art department constantly throughout pre-production of where are we, what is happening in this scene, how's it connected, and continuity, and so I think because there were so many people involved in the project, it forced us to become more prepared, so that made being on set as a director a lot easier. A lot of the work beforehand. So in a sense, yes, Descent was the most difficult. It was a lot to figure out beforehand.
Mostly because it was non-linear is what you were saying?
And we didn't, how we shot it on set was anything that was in the common room inside the space station set, you know, where they're all talking around and then end up fighting and that scenes. All of that was shot on the first day, and then all of the stuff when they're in the small little pod was shot on the second day. So the hard part was maintaining whenever there was a scene transition from a flashback to real time and what emotional state in their emotional happenings in that moment. That was the thing we had to like work out beforehand.
I think you guys on set, when I was on set, because I was doing lighting on set, I was helping you with lighting and stuff, and so I didn't really understand all the footage coming in as an editor. And I remember when I did my rough cut, I was like, hey, this makes sense. And I was like, so I think you guys did a good job of keeping that through, because on set it just felt like shooting random stuff, and I'm like, what is this? And they're here, you know, Annie's like, okay, Lizzie, I want you to act like this, and I'm like, why? Where is that in the script? I don't know. But when I edited it all together, it felt really good. So I think you guys did.
I think the pod was especially hard for me to direct too, because it's such a small space that I wasn't close to it at all on set. I was way back looking at the gigantic monitor, so I could see what the camera could see, but I wasn't close to the actors. And I know that was tough on you guys a couple times. Like, we'd be like, oh, wait, let's do a take. And then you guys would be like, wait, Annie, tell us what we're doing in this shot. Because I was just close.
And another thing that was hard about that is because you're going back and forth, the pod, like, if it was a regular, like all the common room stuff, whenever you're going back to a different scene, you're in a different position or you're sitting in a different place. But in the pod, you're in the exact same position. all the flashbacks happen within, you know, a 2 or 3 minute period, so you're not really moving around. And yeah, so that one was also hard as well, especially for me shooting it.
Yeah.
Like this shot is the exact same shot that we were just doing,
but the
actors
is
are supposed
different.
to be doing something a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've changed the light outside the window.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the second half of the question? Or the second question?
Did you find it difficult to communicate with everyone who was involved?
So yes, with the actors in the pod.
Not because they were difficult people.
Not because they were people at all. Just because
Yeah.
I wasn't close and couldn't hear them very well. I didn't find it difficult to communicate. I think it makes a huge difference that the heads of departments are here. They're my family. We literally, when we're working on a project, we eat a lot of meals together. We spend all day together, and so it's kind of like nonstop production.
It looks like the feed got glitchy.
Oh no.
Oh, we're
Okay,
back on
back.
now.
Are we back on?
Oh,
Yay.
phew! All right. Sorry, technical difficulties.
Thank you. My
Okay.
God.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're saying you couldn't hear the actors when the stream cuts out? I mean.
Yes.
Can you guys still hear us? And
There's a small delay, so we might not hear back for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ellie said we're back.
Cool.
okay.
Yay. So, the main people that I have to communicate with are my siblings, my family. So that's not difficult at all. We're together all the time. We eat together. We talk about movie stuff constantly. It's non-stop production meeting. The people who aren't in our family who are part of it, it's not really difficult to communicate with. The only problem is time sometimes, because some of the people that we're working with have like full-time jobs or part-time jobs where you're constantly trying to juggle between a lot of people's schedules. That's probably the most difficult part.
I think with the exception of Dustin, the guy that played Wakeman, and the students, I think we have worked with everyone that was on the project before. Like, I think almost everyone.
Yeah, so Dustin, who played Wakeman, quite a few of the students we had met before, and Jerry, who owned Mystery Ridge Ranch and who was supervising all the stunts, and he was, he was doing the wire work because it's his stuff and he knows what to do.
Yeah.
Those are the people we hadn't worked with before. So everybody else we've worked on their films, they've worked on our films, and so that makes it super easy to communicate because you just, it's just a bunch of friends on set. And also, the people who we work with they're our friends, but they also know how to be professional on set, and that's something that we communicate with them about.
You're asking about communication, and it's very important that the people that you choose to work with on your production are people that you communicate well with.
Yeah.
Because you're going to spend so much time communicating with them. If they're not great communicators, or if they have a problem communicating with you, or vice versa, you're going to have a lot of big problems. And so kind of like the first test of whether or not you're working with somebody is, can I communicate with them well? So to answer your question, no, we didn't really have a hard time communicating because we choose to work with people who communicate.
Yeah, I was gonna add a little something that we kind of did on Descent that we have been wanting to do, and kind of it was the first time we did it. Was we had weekly production meetings over, or voice chat meetings with everyone during pre-production to make sure that everyone was on the same page. Talking with costumes, sets. How is storyboards going? How are the directors doing it? How are the actors coming on? I mean, well, maybe not actors so much, but just checking in on every piece. to make sure that it was all going smoothly, so that on set it would all go smoothly as well. And so that was like an element of communication.
Yeah, and well, not just making sure that all of the different productions were on time, up to speed on the schedule, but so that we can answer make sure that any communication that needed to happen between the departments could happen. So, we'd start talking about what's going on and find out, oh, costumes needs to talk to the directors and get this sizing from the actors because the actors didn't get it to them yet, or production needed to talk to the camera department to know what camera, things like that come up, and you realize that conversations between the departments need to happen. So that's a big part of communication too.
Daniel wants to know, where did you get the music?
The music. So the music was composed. Do you call that original score? For Descent, and the composer was Ellie Pletica, which we were very excited to work with her. And Rachel produced the score as well. I don't know, I did a vlog a little bit ago, it was probably a couple months ago, on my channel, The Homegrown Filmmaker, about kind of beginning the score. And so if you guys want to know more about it, you can go check out that vlog. I will... How should I link it? Where should I link it? Where?
You could probably post it in the comments of this video once it's saved.
I'll do that.
Or in the description.
Or in the description.
Yeah.
But it's called something like LCC and recording soundtracks or something. That's probably the title. Anyway, for the soundtrack, we had actually a lot of live instruments. So Philip played the cello for the soundtrack. Rachel was singing in the soundtrack, and our mom played the guitar soundtrack and the bass for the soundtrack, bass guitar. So that's what that vlog is about, is recording all of that stuff. That's where we got the soundtrack. Music was inspired a lot by Gravity and not really very much of Interstellar, but
also a lot of Gravity and Battlestar Galactica.
That's what it was. Battlestar
I didn't know about that one.
Yeah, that's a really interesting soundtrack. Haven't seen
especially the first
the
season.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it with the music school. Sorry, I'm hearing a bug in the room.
All it is, big bug.
Yeah. It's
the
October
lights.
here.
Yeah.
Here in Spokane, Washington, we get a lot of
Oh, right on the light.
those,
Guest appearance by bug.
those coniferous bugs. They proliferate. And they're just everywhere this time of year here in Spokane.
So Ellie has a question. What challenges did you encounter on set? And Seth also has a similar question, so maybe we can kind of pair the two. Was staying on schedule a challenge at all for the project? And if you fell behind, how did you handle it?
So was Ellie's question specifically about set?
No, but let's kind of narrow it down to on set, because I feel like that's kind of where a lot of the challenges were. Philip probably had some pre-production challenges, so why don't we start with Philip's pre-production challenges and then move on to on-set challenges. We might be here a long time.
Well, I don't know. I could sum up my challenges just by saying that, once we decided we were going to film at Mystery Ridge and what kind of movie we were going to make, and then the script needed to be written, I knew that, kind of roughly how long the construction on the sets would take, but I didn't know exactly how long it was going to take. Just I haven't done this enough to be able to call that exactly, and so I was just kind of doing as much as I could until we got the script locked enough to a point where I could say, okay, I can actually buy materials and start cutting them, and glue them all together to make something. Because the script's going to change at some point, and it's like, well, I don't want to waste time on things that we're not going to use. And there actually was something that I was working on that we didn't end up using, and it was a good thing that we called not using pretty early on in my process of working on it. It was like, okay, I'm going to stop working on this now because we don't need it. So what drove a lot of my behindedness was just getting a little bit of a late start.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Your main challenge was time.
Yeah.
And then on set challenges, really, I think it kind of came down to this is our first time using wire work and doing completely on set.
Building
scenes,
sets.
like building sets and filming on set.
And having to
Light them.
light them, 'cause
Right.
we're used to using
And
natural
so, like, we did allocate extra time in our heads for all those things, but because we were relatively inexperienced with those things, they took a lot longer, even though we allocated extra time for them. Especially the wire work. Also the wire work, the rigging for the wire work was brand new and not totally finished to do exactly what we wanted to do. So it ended up just being a lot of extra tweaking, extra this, extra that, and 2 hours later we're thinking about getting the first take of this shot that we've been trying to film.
Yeah. And also with wire work, there is a level of danger with it, and so that was also our experience of not knowing how much we could push and really wanting to be cautious about rushing through it. Like, we really didn't want anyone to get hurt or
injured or anything like that, and so it's for us it's hard to know the difference between rushing through something that's a safety thing or rushing through something that we could film a different way and get just a good result, or you know, like,
it was hard to make those calls just 'cause we didn't know.
Yeah. So a lot of that's just experience, and next time we will do better. Next time we maybe won't try and shoot something as ambitious in 2 days. Because a lot of the pressure on set came because we only had 2 days, and there wasn't really an option to say, hey, we can just get the rest a different day, because our talent and our crew and the students were only going to be there for 2 days. The venue was only rented for 2 days, and then everybody had to go back to work and their lives, and
Well, we had people who had to leave early. The second day of shooting, we went 3 or 4 hours over what we were scheduling because we were doing the wire work on that day. So, even at the end of the day, we were approaching 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night. People were saying, I have to go, I have to be up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go to work. And, people had to leave because we were just going way over schedule.
And I'm the one who builds the schedule, so in my scheduling I was trying not to go over an 8-hour day, and both them, the first day was 10 hours and the second day was 12 hours.
14.
14.
Okay.
We were like 12 hours first day, 14 the second day.
Oh, okay, so way over.
Way over.
And, that gets really exhausting when you're on your feet for that long, and then you barely have enough time to go home, go to sleep, and turn around and do it again. So really we squeezed a short film of this size out of a 2-day shoot, and so kind of like that was our biggest challenge, was trying to film this in 2 days. And it caused a lot of problems. We did fall behind, and so what it looks like when we fall behind is I'm looking at my watch going, this is taking way too long, and Annie and I start having a discussion about what we're going to cut and what order we can do things to make things go faster. So we have a lot of discussions about efficiency and what could be getting started while we're finishing something.
We're also watching the processes of the crew a lot, just like looking for ways that people could be going faster, not to like rush them or like make it. we want them to be able to do a capable job, but looking
Yeah.
for ways that they can speed up their own processes.
Yeah,
and
you-
just like,
Just
oh,
refining processes.
yeah, do you need a hand here that would make that faster, or if you cut out this little bit, or
Yeah.
something wrong with
Or
it.
recognizing that something coming up is too big of a job for just one person and saying, you know, in 5 minutes I want you to go help them carry, you know, all those apple boxes or, you know, light
all the
sticks.
gear out of the way or whatever.
Yeah. Or recognizing that we're about to switch directions and that everything that was behind the camera will now be in front of the camera and we have to move it. Move everything. You know, so just kind of getting a jump start on anything that could save a few minutes here, save a few minutes there. And
Yeah, we had the 2 sets, and so there was a moment where there was like we were doing a setup in one area, so we allocated a bunch of people to take it down of the set and get it loaded so that we could ship it back home, so that we wouldn't have to stick around after all the shooting to do that.
right.
Because we would have been there until 2 in the morning cleaning up.
Yeah.
Anywho.
So just a lot of conversations, and that's a really big reason why you need to have somebody who's focusing on how the film looks and how the story is going, and somebody completely different who's focusing on how long it's taking and how it's going to happen. Those
And,
two things need to be very separate.
And seeing where things could be going faster.
For sure. Daniel wants to know, what were some of your favorite moments on set?
Getting to set the fray, and because the big common room, Annie and I had never seen it set up with the lights on until we got to set that morning, first day of shooting. To actually get.
There was lots
And-
of squeals.
Yes.
Yeah, that one was really fun, and then part of that was also once we had the lighting set up, and we had all the actors like standing in that room in that wide shot you see when the Wakeman comes down the ladder, and they're all just like standing there around the table. I was just like, this looks cool.
Yeah, there's moments where it's just like, this looks like a movie.
Or what about when Jacob comes through the door and we had Ellie on the back sliding
It
the
was
door
Alina.
open?
It was Alina.
Oh, was Alina?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we had Alina back there opening, closing the door, and it's like you nail the perfect take, and it's like you totally forget that there's the door is almost another character. With the rehearsed practice behind it. And,
Yeah, 'cause
you know, it just
Great
looked, you
performance.
felt like you were on a Star Trek set or something like that.
In the movie, when
Close it.
the door opens, you see the roomies coming out. That was a green screen back there. That room didn't exist, and Josiah put in another room, and
But even so, on set, it was like, hey, and the door opened. Look at that.
Yeah. It was either that or when we had all the actors in the pod set, and then I designed it to tip on its back to simulate the direction of force that there would be when the rocket engines are firing, when you're falling heavy through the atmosphere. You experience it. We'd have the actors laying on, or I would say you'd have the astronauts laying on their back, because that's the direction that your body can take the most G-forces without dying.
That was a pretty fun experience because we had to get in it and then they tipped it. So it was like
Imagine
you know,
that.
you get to like here and you feel like you're flat and you keep going.
That feeling of being in a dentist chair and you're going back and you're like, surely I'm just going to slide right out.
Yeah.
It was like that, but a little bit worse.
Yeah, that was a pretty fun moment.
I think the first day in general was a little bit easier on everybody and to have fun. Second day was a little bit more stressful, just because time. We
And-
ran out of it.
and the actors were in the same full day. Like, there wasn't movement, and
Yeah.
oh, another fun thing. It wasn't on set, but it was the night before, or the night before the premiere. We were still composing music for the ending, and Rachel and Annie and Ellie called me in because Rachel had an idea about the music. Annie had another idea, and they couldn't decide like which one was better.
Oh.
And I said, you could move it right there, and they were both happy with it. And at like 11 o'clock at night, and like that was just like, yes, I did something.
Made us both happy.
Yeah.
That's a feat.
Yeah. I don't know, just the whole thing was very fun as an as an actress because it was just like we're in sets, and especially when they were shaking the pod for real on set. That was very fun. I cracked up the first time they did it because I was having so much fun.
Yeah, in the gaggle we just posted like last week, I think.
Yeah, it was
the last shot in that gaggle. It was, I think, the first take of us shaking the pod.
Yeah, and I was just like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I think I would say that my part was seeing all of the students like enjoying it, even though set was pretty stressful, and as Annie and Rachel were saying that it was going so much over time, and we had a lot of people that were like, I gotta go home. And we were kind of like, yeah, we do too. I think that just like seeing all the students going through everything that we'd been planning to happen, and like that piece of it worked very smoothly, I think. And so it was just like, seeing new students come around and asking them questions and seeing how things were going. That's what I was doing on set, was just like, what are you learning? What do you feel, so far on this set experience? And I don't know, that was the funnest part for me.
Also lunch break. Or when one of the crafty people would come through with a tray of like jelly beans
gummy bears. There were no jelly beans on set. Yeah, I think our set was entirely run on gummy bears.
Probably. I think the pod run on gummy bears as well.
Just blanked on it.
The squeezy apple juice?
No, Sunkist. No, Capri Sun.
Capri Sun.
That's what I was thinking.
Gummy
Wow.
bears and Capri Sun.
Juice boxes.
Yep.
No.
My favorite moment was when all of the actors were in hair and makeup and their costumes. And you kind of saw them all for the first time. You're like, "Hey, this is like a movie," because we had previously been just kind of seeing it piecemeal. So that was really fun. Luke wants to know, what's the best project you've ever worked on?
See, again, pieces. There's been pieces of every project that have been different and fun, and so I can't point at one and say that was the best ever. Even other people's projects, not necessarily our projects. There's always just sequences that we're seeing or moments in the shooting.
I would say Weeping Willow was pretty fun.
I would say Weeping Willow
Because we were like getting started, but also like really getting to know each other on set, and it was just like, I don't know, it was fun.
I think Weeping Willow, because it was longer, we did 8 days of shooting, I think, for Weeping Willow. That made it a lot different with shooting only for 2 days, which is what we've done for most of our films, besides Weeping Willow. When you're only shooting for 2 days, it turns it into a very high-pressure environment because you only have 2 days, and there's so much jam-packed into it. I think for Weeping Willow, we had more time, which made it more relaxed, which made it more fun. So I would say the most fun I've ever had was probably on the set of Weeping Willow. But I also think that now we're making much cooler stuff. Like, I think Descent is just really awesome. It's really cool to watch.
Yeah.
So that's that part of it. It's really fun.
Also, our first like professional film project, 10 Decades, was fun in that it was like our first time experiencing like an actual film set. And
It
what
was fun in
supposed
that
to
aspect.
Fun.
I don't know. I
It was fun.
personally had a lot of fun on the set of Lost and Found. I know a lot of people didn't like that set because it was so cold. And everyone was wet. Everyone was very wet. But I personally had a lot of fun on that one. I prefer colder weather than hot weather because we filmed in both. And yeah. Well, I also had one of the most active jobs on that set. So I didn't freeze like I know a few other people did.
It's far easier to warm up than it is to cool down. Always shoot in winter.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think my favorite that we've worked on so far was actually Save Lives, Apologize.
Really?
Yeah. There are a lot of things I really enjoyed about that film. Lots of things that I look back and go, could be better, but it was a concept that I really enjoyed, and I felt like on set was a little bit more relaxed than we normally have. So let's do, this is a question from Bobby, and this will probably be one of our last questions unless we get more coming in. How do you find the right people to delegate your vision to?
Yeah. So Rachel already talked a little bit about this with communication. I don't know how you find people. Like, it's different for everyone. It's different for every person who comes in to work on your projects, and it's also different for a person leading a project. How you connect with people, logistically. But the people that you're actually looking for are, you, like Rachel said, you want people who actually communicate and who you can communicate with well. It usually means someone who is very open, what we call teachable. Someone who actually wants to hear what you have to say and doesn't get caught up in, you know, having to have their ideas accepted, having to have their ideas, you know.
Someone who actually wants to collaborate with you.
Yeah, it's much more about how they understand teamwork and how they work as a team with you. You're, like, to us, that is definitely way more important than, like, their skill, their technical skill in anything, because it gives them a real willingness to learn and to, I don't know, just be a part of the team. It's really, really hard to be a team member with someone who is always pushing for their own ideas or gets offended for, you know, for whatever reason. That's really hard to work with, and it's not going to end up in good quality end product or a happy on-set, you know, atmosphere or a happy relationship at the end of it. You know, filmmaking is so creative and it's so collaborative that it really is essential that you find people who are actually good at teamwork.
Yeah. It's also really important that you find people who have different skill sets than you. And kind of when you're first starting out, it's kind of, you could be like, well, I want to direct. And then you have this friend who also, I want to direct. And then you have this other friend, I want to direct too. And then you have a group of 3 or 4 director actors. And it's when you're starting to grow in skill and starting to want to move past that stage, what you need to do is you need to find somebody who doesn't act or direct, and somebody who would be interested in producing for you and who could handle some logistics for you and maybe handle some food for you. So that you start separating the creative and the technical and the logistical. Like those 3 branches need to start separating. And this is something that we talk about for almost a whole day at the Film Intensive.
Yes.
In very great detail, because this is essential. And so I think Bobby's also asking, how do we find people?
Yeah. So that's really hard to say. We start with our family, and then we start with from there we move on to our friends who are interested in filmmaking. And from there we move on to their families. No, okay. But really, there is, especially in the logistical side of things, there are a lot of people who are really good at it who don't know that it's a part of filmmaking, who don't know that they could have a place in filmmaking. You know, that was Rachel for a long time. I don't think you were interested in filmmaking at all, ever, until we started filmmaking, and she was like, oh, you need help organizing things and like bringing things together. I can do that. It's not actually related to making a movie, because it's also the same skills as coordinating events and running large families, and it's like a lot of that skill translates really well. So if you're looking for logistical help, you could actually look for people who aren't necessarily interested in filmmaking, but who are interested in organizing. Finding other filmmakers, that's a little bit more of a challenge. It really does depend on where you live. We've been lucky enough to live in the Seattle area and now in the Spokane area, and there are large film communities here, which means that we're coming into an established place where there's already Facebook groups, and this person knows that person, knows that person, knows that person. So that's a place to start, and from there
we go to networking events. We've contacted modeling and talent agencies. We've
also just gone to homeschool because that's where we come from. We're homeschoolers, and so we just contacted all of the homeschool groups in our location, which there's a ton in the Seattle area. It's a very established homeschool area. So that's actually most of our cast for Weeping Willow was, hey, you want to come be in a movie? Come audition for us.
And that's generally how we find people of similar, I don't know, life principles, I guess you could say, where
similar values.
Similar values. We know that when we're inviting Christian homeschoolers onto what we're doing, usually they'll have similar values as us, so that we can have a more family-friendly set experience.
And it's not just one come all. We do meet people and get an idea of what it would be like to work with them. Do auditions, you go to networking events and actually meet people, because then from there you can go judge, I really enjoyed talking to them, I really enjoyed their audition and just how they were, let's invite them in. We do tend to be a little bit more, what do you call that?
We screen people?
We screen people a little bit, just because we care a lot about who we work with and the environment that they're bringing in.
And we've also met other people working on other people's sets. So we work on this set, and maybe we really liked working with, one of the camera assistants, and we went, hey, we're shooting a movie, would you happen to be interested in working with us? We've met a couple people that way as well.
So you just get out and meet people and create a network. Mark said that he's been on a short film shoot all day, and just got back and wanted to say hi.
Hello! Hi! Glad you're out doing something. That's the best.
All right, so this is the last question, and then we'll wrap it up. What is next for us?
We kind of talked about that already. We're going to do another intensive.
Somebody else asked where do we see ourselves in the next 5 years?
Ooh, good questions.
Getting paid for what we do.
Older. I'm gonna stay the same age for the next 5 years. No, so yes, we're working on the script for the next intensive, which it's only in the idea stage right now, so we're still pinpointing what we want to do. We're also starting to talk about a feature. We've actually been talking about doing a feature for about 1.5 years now, but haven't found the right idea for a feature. We're kind of shooting for, as much as we would love to do a sci-fi or a fantasy feature or something, really fun and epic like that, it costs a lot of money. A lot of money.
So you have to design the world.
Design the world and create it. So we're probably going to go with something much smaller budget. So that's probably why it's taking us so long to find an idea that's kind of outside of our wheelhouse. And we do want to make something that we really love. So we're searching on that one.
Yes. But we're a lot closer, I think. We're narrowing our box. Because we always like to have constraints for ourselves that will help us make the film the best it can be. And when your box is too big, your film just bounces around in it and it gets all muddy. So we want to have a nice tight, concise box, and I feel like our box is finally starting to be
small enough that we could actually have ideas now.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the next 5 years, we want to definitely establish the education side of what we're doing more. We want to try a film intensive every year, and we are developing some other classes as well. The film intensive is not very specific, and it's mostly just about teamwork, honestly. That's what it's about. And it's not like, hey, come learn a bunch of technical stuff about camera, or learn a whole bunch of technical stuff about acting, or anything like that. It's come experience being in a team. That's what the intensive is about.
Yeah, and it can also help you like narrow down what area you want to focus in, because like, you know, you get all those writers, directors, actors, cinematographers who are like, I want to do everything, and then they come be on a real, you know, set where there's a separate person in each of those jobs, and they go, you know what, I actually don't like any of those other jobs, I just want to do that one job. That's what the film intensive is for.
Yeah. So we're developing some more specialized classes. We did our first one, Cinematography 101, this summer, but we're looking into doing a producing class and whatever other classes people are requesting, but we're looking into recording them live streaming them, and then putting them online, because it's probably been the hardest thing we've discovered is trying to get people in the same place, get them physically here.
Yeah.
All at one time for several days in a row. That's really difficult to coordinate for a lot of people. So we're looking at going online with that, and then any other education stuff. Like, that's a lot for right now. But.
Yeah, we've been working. These are actually almost ready. Lauren and I have been working on freebies. So.
Oh yeah.
So things that can help beginning filmmakers get started with better organization. So some things that like a simple call sheet, a simple script breakdown thing, different things that you can download from our website. So we've been creating those, but we don't quite have them ready to go yet. But within the next few months, we hopefully will be releasing those so that we can kind of pass along some of the simple things that we've learned to make things a little bit easier when you're first starting to get into the organizational part.
Yeah, and tailor them a little bit more toward beginning filmmakers, because you can find stuff like that online, but for me, when we were starting out, it was really overwhelming. It was like, there's all these different columns and categories, and I don't even know what am I looking at? I don't know. You know, so this is like simplifying it down to what you would need as a 5-person crew to 10-person crew, basically. And it's not a huge, gigantic, don't know what's going on.
It's not, because the water call sheets are meant for dealing with a couple hundred people, not necessarily 10 people.
Yeah.
So, so there's a lot of things you don't need right at first.
So that's the education side of things. For films, obviously we want to make a feature or 3, probably in the next 5 years, maybe, probably not.
3 features in 5 years.
A lot of features.
Okay, maybe 2 features in the next 5 years.
And we still want to make short films here and there, like,
yeah,
because short films are good to practice like a specific skill.
Yeah.
Especially technical skill.
Yeah. We want to be able to get paid for what we do.
Yes.
And pay all of our wonderful, talented crew as well in 5 years.
Yeah. So I think that's probably our goal for the next 5 years, is for all of us to be paid full-time for working on film. Because that's our main struggle right now is, oh, let's make a movie. Oh, wait, several of us have full-time jobs and children and like, like, when are we going to schedule that in?
Yeah.
But if we could get paid for it, that would make it a lot easier. So working on the business side of making a lot more lately.
Yes. Well, I guess that wraps it up. Thank you so much for joining us today and for sending in your questions. We really enjoyed talking with you guys and hearing your thoughts about things. And this video will be posted on our YouTube page, so if you'd like to share it or watch it again, it will be available on the YouTube page, and we'll also probably be posting it on the Facebook page, so you can find it there as well. My name is Rachel Jordan. I'm the producer.
I had a thought first. More behind the scenes for Descent is going to be coming out next couple weeks. We have some more in-depth videos that we can release now that the film is out. So keep your eyes peeled for that. It'll be coming on the Abundant House channel.
And a VFX breakdown.
Yes, Max is going to do a VFX breakdown.
Yes. Alrighty. Well, I'm Rachel Jordan. I'm the producer for Descent, and
I am Lizzie Pulling, and I was the co-writer, and I played the main character, Lynn.
I'm Max Jordan. I was co-director and cinematographer.
I'm Annie Pulling-Butt, and I was director, co-writer.
I'm Josiah Pulling, and I was the editor and VFX artist, and I helped Max with lighting on set.
And I'm Philip Pulling. I was the art director, production designer.
thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!